So many people have died in this war, and we're gonna get it ended.
And my congratulations with your successful ceasefire in the Middle East.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you did it, and I think this is the momentum to finish Russia's war against Ukraine.
This is Today As It Happened. Good Friday evening to you. I'm Stephanie Liebergen here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day. From President Donald Trump's meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to the state of the New York City mayoral race after last night's debate. But first, let's have a look at some of our other top headlines. Former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton surrendered to authorities in Maryland this morning after being indicted on 18 counts of transmitting and mishandling classified documents. Prosecutors say Bolton shared more than 1,000 pages of government information with two relatives in diary-like notes. The indictment also alleges he kept classified documents at his home in Maryland for years after leaving the Trump administration. In a statement, Bolton has denied any wrongdoing and said this indictment is part of President Trump's, quote, intensive effort to intimidate his opponents. I want to bring in our Scripps News congressional correspondent, Nathaniel Reed, live from our D.C. newsroom with a little more on the reaction to this Bolton indictment. So, Nate, what have we heard from Washington and the White House since this came out yesterday?
Well, look, let's put the indictment and its 180-year possible sentence for John Bolton aside for a minute here. And let's focus on one thing, which is President Trump does not like John Bolton. He's made no secret of that. He reacted to it in the moments after Bolton was indicted yesterday in the Oval Office. And previously this week alone has already had pointed comments for other foes of him and his presidency who he believes should be indicted as well. Take a listen.
I think he's, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad. Deranged Jack Smith, in my opinion, is a criminal. I hope they're looking at Shifty Schiff. I hope they're looking at all these people. And I'm allowed to find out. I'm allowed to, I'm, in theory, the chief law enforcement officer.
And again, those two people, Special Counsel Jack Smith, who ran the probe of President Donald Trump's conduct during the 2020 election, whether he had sought to get the election result overturned criminally. That is someone who President Trump has set his eyes on. Also, Senator Adam Schiff, now a U.S. Senator from California, then a congressman from California who led President Trump's first impeachment in the U.S. House and Senate. Ultimately, President Trump taking square aim at some of his political enemies, political rivals during this second Trump term. The president already using his administration to indict James Comey, the former FBI director, along with New York Attorney General Tish James. Again, both of them indicted for crimes not necessarily related, of course, to the reason why President Trump has sparred with them in the past, but both of those indictments called by Democrats as purely political on behalf of President Trump. Now, what's not clear is if those two other people who you just heard President Trump reference, both Jack Smith and, of course, Senator Adam Schiff, could face federal charges. But certainly President Trump has made it clear in the public that he would like to see some of his political enemies charged. Just that is happening. John Bolton, just another political enemy of President Trump, who at one point, though he was on Trump's side, eventually turned against Trump, published a book critical of the Trump administration that he had served in the first Trump term, and ultimately now finds himself indicted in federal court.
Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed, thank you. A federal judge in Chicago is requiring immigration officers to wear body cameras during enforcement operations. Judge Sarah Ellis says she's concerned about continued clashes between agents and the public, and some incidents so far have involved tear gas and other tactics. More than 1,000 immigrants have been arrested in the Chicago area since September, and the judge also summoned a senior official to court next week to discuss that ongoing enforcement operation. Hawaii's Kilauea volcano is shooting lava from its summit crater again. The eruption early today was the volcano's 35th episode since December. Lava fountains from the south vent soared over 1,300 feet in the air. That's taller than New York City's Empire State Building. Scientists believe, though, all of the eruptions are part of the same event because magma is following the same pathway to the surface. And Ace Frehley, the original lead guitarist and founding member of Kiss, has died at the age of 74. Frehley, known as Space Ace for his galactic makeup and smoking guitar effects, died peacefully in New Jersey after a recent fall. Kiss was famous for theatrical stage shows with fire, fake blood, and their signature black and white face paint. The band's hits included Rock and Roll All Night and I Was Made for Lovin' You. Big crowds of protesters are expected Saturday all across the U.S. in opposition to what they call increasingly authoritarian practices by President Donald Trump. It's the second No Kings protest of this year, and organizers say they are responding to the president's immigration crackdown and restrictions on First Amendment rights. Protests are planned for more than 2,500 locations across the country, including in Denver. And that's where we find our Scripps News Group correspondent Maggie Bryan in one of those cities getting ready to hold one of those major rallies. So Maggie, what are the expectations tomorrow in the Mile High City?
Hey, good morning, Stephanie. Denver and dozens of other cities across Colorado are planning for these No Kings protests happening tomorrow. One of the biggest ones is going to be happening right outside the Colorado State Capitol here in downtown Denver. We know the protest organizers actually sent a permit to the state to allow for 10,000 people outside here. And while that's just an estimate, it kind of gives you an idea of just how large this protest may get. And again, these are going to be very widespread across our state, from Fort Collins up north all the way down south to Pueblo and across the Denver metro area. We want to show you some video of the last No Kings protest that happened here in Denver back in June. Thousands of people showed up to protest in downtown Denver alone. The demonstrations were mostly peaceful, but a few dozen people were arrested later in the evening. That's because they tried to get onto the highway. And we've also heard from RTD, which runs public transportation here. They say they've been working with Denver police very closely over the past few days just to get updates on these protests. RTD also has their own police department. They put officers along bus stops and along routes just to make sure employees and people using their services stay safe. RTD says they're going to be increasing the number of officers along their routes tomorrow, and they're going to be posting any updates, any delays, any disruptions to services on their website as well. Live in Denver, I'm Maggie Bryan, Scripps News.
Scripps News Group correspondent Maggie Bryan, thank you so much for that update, and there will be millions protesting across the country this weekend. Coming up on Today As It Happened.
Respect the police. They're not racists, as the assemblyman calls them.
As much as Andrew Cuomo wants to bring up tweets from 2020, which is around the same time that he was sending seniors to their death in nursing homes, I am looking to work with police officers.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. Let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories. There is a local political race garnering national attention. Of course, we're talking about the race to become New York City's next mayor, and the three candidates running for that job faced off on the debate stage last night. We have former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is now running as an independent, your Republican candidate and Guardian Angels founder Curtis Sliwa, and your Democratic candidate, Assemblymember Zohran Mamdani, all took shots at each other while trying to appeal to New York City voters. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller is live from New York City with a little bit more on that debate and what exactly the candidates had to say. So we have seen, Alex, the president send the National Guard into a lot of major cities across the country, but not New York City. However, the candidates were asked how they might respond if the president were to send the National Guard up to NYC. So what did they have to say about that?
Well, they all said that they would reject the president sending in the National Guard to New York. Governor Cuomo talking about how he believes that the reason, or that Zohran Mamdani's election, if he is to become the next mayor, would actually invite the National Guard into New York City, saying that he wouldn't be able to stop President Trump from doing so. They all said that they believed that they would be the one that would be able to stand up to the president. Listen to what they said.
There's no need for the National Guard in New York.
I agree with Police Commissioner Tisch in that we do not need the National Guard here in New York City. We do not need them for the purpose of safety, because if it was safety that President Trump was so concerned about, he would send them to the 8 out of 10 states that have the highest levels of crime in this country, but he won't, because they're all run by Republicans.
The National Guard he's not sending in the National Guard to do any real function. It's control, it's power. He's trying to say these Democrats don't know how to run these cities, and it's a political gesture by sending in the National Guard.
And Mamdani spent a good part of this debate trying to tie Cuomo and Trump to each other, whether they discussed the pandemic or the donors that Mamdani says that the two of them share. Now, it also parlayed into this interesting discussion about protests, which we have seen really in large numbers here in New York City for the better part of the last 2 years, as well as the discussions of the First Amendment, the candidates saying that the president is infringing on Americans' right to free speech. But they were all asked how they would handle the protests that we have seen, particularly because Mamdani and Sliwa in the past have been arrested for protesting. Mamdani arrested for blocking traffic, asked if he would do the same as mayor. He kind of skirted the question, saying he was going to work to protect Americans' First Amendment rights, but that he would not engage in these similar kinds of protests. Sliwa also saying that he wouldn't necessarily engage in those as well. He's been arrested for peaceful protests in the decades that he has been part of the New York City protest scene, if you will. Now, he also said, though, that he's concerned about the way protests have changed over the last few years, saying that he thinks it has evolved into something bigger than the right to free speech. He says he doesn't believe that people should be able to wear masks on the streets during protests, and Cuomo agreed with him, at least in the sense that he thinks that the protests also have gotten out of hand. He says that they have turned into something more about harassment and intimidation than really just expressing people's First Amendment rights.
Well, Mamdani describes himself as a democratic socialist, and he has been very critical of the police in the past. He was asked to address some of those comments last night, so how did he handle that?
Yeah, this is really one of two issues that Mamdani was walking this fine line, almost walking back some of his previous comments on the police. He, in the past, in 2020, and even as recently as 2022, has called for defunding the police, calling the police racist, saying that they are a major threat to public safety. Earlier in the day, he apologized for this language, not necessarily his concerns behind those kinds of statements, but for the language in itself that he used. It didn't stop his opponents from going after him about this, though. Listen.
Respect the police. They're not racists, as the assemblyman calls them. They're not a threat to public safety, as he says. They're not anti-queer. They are here to protect New Yorkers, work with them, fortify them.
I have been clear time and time again that as much as Andrew Cuomo wants to bring up tweets from 2020, which is around the same time that he was sending seniors to their death in nursing homes, I am looking to work with police officers, not to defund the NYPD, looking to ensure that officers can actually do one job when they're signing up to join that department.
And Steph, the former NYPD Commissioner Ray Kelly has said that he has concerns about the future of the force if Mamdani is to be elected, saying that he thinks there could be a mass exodus of officers. Cuomo, for his part, saying he would add to the force, but Curtis Sliwa, the Republican candidate, also came after Cuomo for his stance on the NYPD, particularly on his support for ending qualified immunity. So you could see all of these candidates were going after each other over the course of that 2-hour-long debate. They all kind of did what they needed to do to continue that support for their base. There wasn't any major slip-ups for any of these candidates, but it remains to be seen whether or not there will be any real lasting effect from this particular debate, because the race has been kind of solidified, particularly since Eric Adams, the current mayor, dropped out of the race. Mamdani continues to pull ahead, and there has been pressure on the Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa to drop out of the race, particularly because he is polling much lower than Cuomo. But it doesn't appear that he is going to do so, so it's hard to see there being any major impact to the race. Obviously, just a couple of weeks left before Election Day, and there still is one major general election debate left, and that is next Wednesday.
Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller live from New York City for us this morning. Thanks so much for breaking down that debate. Up next on Today As It Happened.
And President Trump is really showed for the world that he can manage ceasefire in Middle East. And that's why I hope that he will do this, and we will also have such big success. For Ukraine, it's a big chance. And I hope that President Trump can manage it.
I'm Del Walters in Washington, D.C., where it is day 17 of the federal government shutdown, and any hopes for a resolution will have to wait until at least Monday because the Senate has gone home for the weekend. Our congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed has the latest.
The ongoing government shutdown is guaranteed to stretch into a fourth week after a 10th vote to reopen the government failed in the Senate, with no agreement on how to end the stalemate. There is no end in sight to the current standoff on Capitol Hill. Democrats remain dug in their push for an extension to expanded Affordable Care Act tax credits, which expire at the end of this year, a cliff that could cause millions of Americans to lose their health care insurance over the next decade. Republican leaders in Congress saying they're willing to reach a deal, but only once Democrats vote to reopen the government, a non-starter as both parties remain dug in.
We're not going to bend, we're not going to break, because it's the health care of the American people that's at stake.
As the shutdown drags on, it's become increasingly clear that this spectacle is the reason the Democrats have refused to reopen the government. Evidently, they've decided it's more important to show a fight to President Trump and appease this mob than to reopen the government and ensure the American people are taken care of. It's a binary choice right now.
Now, senators from both parties saying the only way to end this standoff might be intervention from the White House, more specifically, from President Donald Trump.
What's the way out of this shutdown? Is there some sort of bipartisan off-ramp that's emerging, or is it the same as ever?
Well, number one, President Trump has to be involved because the Republicans won't move unless he gives them their blessing.
I think he is involved. I mean, he said that he's willing to make a deal. So I would just say to Democrats and Republicans, send the president a deal he can sign.
While the Senate is stuck in a legislative Groundhog Day, House Speaker Mike Johnson has kept the House out of Washington, D.C. for nearly a month now, betting that the Senate will end the stalemate and ruling out any bipartisan compromise between the two chambers. Caught in the middle of it all, federal employees, thousands now laid off, which Democrats contend is illegal, and others furloughed or forced to work without pay. Federal law guarantees them back pay, but when that back pay is coming is anyone's guess, with no end to the shutdown in sight. Nathaniel Reed, Scripps News Group, Washington.
In other headlines, 9 people have now been arrested in connection with that mass shooting in Mississippi that left 6 people dead and more than a dozen others injured, that according to the FBI. That shooting happening last Friday around midnight, and 2 of the injured are still in critical condition. Several suspects have been charged with capital murder. The FBI now asking you, the public, to share any information you might have with authorities. Oklahoma's mandate to have a Bible in every public school classroom is being rescinded. The state's new superintendent, Lyndall Field, saying he has no plans to enforce that rule. That mandate was put in place by his predecessor, Ryan Walters, and would have required educators to teach from the Bible. That move was already facing a legal challenge. Walters resigned last month after his aggressive approach sparked friction with state leaders, including that state's Republican governor. President Trump hosting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House this afternoon. Both men expected to discuss Ukraine's request for Tomahawk missiles. As you can see, the president is holding court right now. So let's listen in.
It's been a long time, and I think we're making great progress. So we're going to be talking about that today. We'll be talking about what took place yesterday with my phone call with President Putin. And I think that things are coming along pretty well. It began with Alaska, where I think certain guidelines were discussed, and we want to see if we can get this done. This was long ago into the Biden administration. I came here and we inherited this, and we'd like to see if we could finish it, end it. We want it ended. So many people have died in this war, and we're gonna get it ended. So I just want to thank you all very much. If you have a couple of questions, go ahead, please. In fact, before I do that, let me just ask the President to say a few words. Thank you, President.
Pleasure. Glad to meet you again, Mr. President. Thank you very much for the invitation. Again, my congratulations with your successful ceasefire in the Middle East.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you did it, and I think this is a momentum to finish Russia's war against Ukraine. I think that, yes, we understand that Putin is not ready. I think not ready, but I think that I'm confident that with your help we can stop this war, and we really need it. We see that they don't have successful steps on the battlefield, and it's good. I think that their army is weak now, but a lot of losses. They have a lot of losses and in economy and people, and I think this is a very important moment. And I wanted to thank you, Mr. President, after our phone calls. Yesterday I had a good opportunity to meet with the big American energy companies, and they're ready to help us. Yes, after all these attacks on our infrastructure, Russian attacks, and etc. And I had also meetings, thanks to your team. We had meetings with a good military companies. We spoke about air defense, and I want to share it after with details where we are. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
Very good. And I think it looks beautiful in his jacket.
Yeah?
It's a beautiful. I hope people notice. It's a good. It's actually very stylish. I like it.
President Trump.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Coming up on Today as It Happened.
Just before the call, it was Tomahawk missiles going to Ukraine, and then right away in the afternoon we see the language of President Trump changed.
Hopefully, we'll be able to get the war over with without thinking about tomahawks.
You're watching Today as It Happened, Scripps News rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day. So let's jump right back in.
California now has 2 cases of mpox, also known as monkeypox. The cases were confirmed in Los Angeles and Long Beach counties. They involve people with no recent travel to areas of the world with mpox outbreaks. Officials saying the risk to the public is low. Local and state health departments are contacted to trace the virus. Both infected people were sent to the hospital, but now are back home recovering. The cases are the first identified cases that are not believed to be connected to international travel. Mpox is a rare disease caused by an infection from a virus in the same family that causes smallpox. A fight for free press, or simply changing with the times? That is the battle unfolding right now at Indiana University in Bloomington. The university facing allegations of censorship after it shuttered its long-running student newspaper, the Indiana Daily Student. But the school says it is simply part of a digital-first strategy. Scripps News national correspondent Katia Tubman is looking into this, and Katia, students there say it all started when the university dismissed their newspaper advisor over content. What did you find?
Well, Del, good evening. For the first time in 150 years, more than that actually, Indiana University Bloomington's flagship paper, the Indiana Daily Student, was not printed and wasn't on campus on newsstands as of this week, and that's because of a decision and dispute between the university as well as the editors and the paper. As you mentioned there, the advisor was fired, and so this move came after his firing, as well as multiple conversations, according to the editors, with the school's administration about what could go into the paper. They told me that they were directed not to print any news that wasn't about homecoming in this upcoming issue. And that is why the school stopped the presses on the paper altogether. Now, the editors who refused to take out the news from the paper, they told me that they fear the school's interference with the paper and the content would also amount to censorship, and that they fear what the implications could be at other colleges. Now, here's what Mia Hilkowitz and Andrew Miller told me when it came to what they see for other college campuses and their papers.
The IDS has been around for 158 years. We have been around longer than most student publications or student media organizations across the country. If it can happen to us, if administrators are allowed to steamroll us and clearly violate the First Amendment, what's going to happen at other institutions?
Now, in a statement to Scripps News, a spokesperson for the school's media school cited a move to digital as a financial reason and also the reason for them to stop the printing of the paper this week. And they also said in a quote to us that prioritizing student experiences that are more consistent with today's digital-first media environment is important to them, and that editorial control remains fully with the IDS leadership. And that is something both Mia and Andrew told me they don't feel right now. Del?
Hey, Katie, let's go back to that issue of content. What content do the student editors believe the university is trying to censor?
Well, I asked the student editors just that, and we've learned that the editors were planning, for one, to publish a letter about the firing of their advisor, which was a big deal for them because he was the go-between between the student editors as well as the university when it came to what could go into this issue and what could go into the paper going forward. And so having him fired, they were planning to issue a letter in that paper that they were directed not to include news in. And so they didn't want to speculate as to that being the reason why the paper was fully cut from being print this week, but that was one of the reasons. Another a point that they noted to me is that they've been reporting heavily on an allegation of plagiarism against the school's president, and they've been asking for the school to release the formal review of those allegations. And they said that they, again, wouldn't speculate as to why they were cut from printing the paper this week, but they had pointed out that they have been doing some rigorous reporting and accountability for the university. And supporters are saying this does feel like it amounts to censorship, stopping them from printing what they have been reporting on campus. And that includes press freedom advocates that I spoke to, which includes Stephen Key, who is the former executive director of Hoosier State Press Association. And here's what he told us.
A business decision would say, yes, you're only going to do print, or you can't afford to do this type of an operation. But that's different than to say, okay, we do not want you to publish any news in the print editions that you produce. And so if you're not agreeable to that, then we'll just wipe out all the print editions.
Again, the school has defended the decision as a business decision, Del, and the students say that they are feeling mounting support from everyone across the board, especially including their famous alum, billionaire Mark Cuban, who's also spoken out and called this situation censorship. Del?
Our national correspondent, Katia Tubman, for us in New York City. Katia, as always, thank you very much. This weekend, Americans across more than 2,600 towns and cities are expected to take to the streets for the second straight No King's Day protest. Organizers say they are mobilizing in all 50 states to oppose what they are calling escalating authoritarianism under the Trump administration. Scripps News correspondent Mara Barrett has been tracking the story. And Mara, there's been a rise in protests this year. So what do they hope to accomplish?
Well, Del, you'll remember that the first No Kings protest was held back in June, and data actually shows that it was the largest single-day protest event in U.S. history. And organizers say that Saturday's event will significantly surpass even this summer's protest, but they emphasize that they've coordinated both safety training and de-escalation plans in order to keep the protests peaceful.
Show me what democracy looks like!
From San Diego to the suburbs of Ohio and southern Texas to Tampa, millions are expected to hit the streets Saturday for nationwide No Kings protests, demonstrating against President Trump and his administration's policies.
And over the past few months, thousands of people have organized once again in their communities, on the ground locally, volunteering to bring their neighbors, families, and friends together to say unequivocally, we have no kings.
The planned protests come as new polling out Friday shows 6 in 10 U.S. adults disapprove of how President Trump is handling his job. Republicans, like House Speaker Mike Johnson, labeling the demonstrations as Hate America rallies.
It'll be a collection of wild leftist policy priorities, and that'll be on display for the whole country.
But organizers behind Saturday's protests say peaceful, nonviolent demonstrations are a core American principle, which is what they're committed to.
There is nothing more American than saying that we don't have kings
and exercising our right to peaceful protest.
But 30% of Americans now say violence may be necessary to get the country back on track, according to a recent poll. That's up 10 points from last year. And a quarter of Democrats say use of force is justified to remove President Trump from office. All as violence against political voices on both sides continues to rise. Psychology research professor Clark McCauley compares this moment to the 1900s anarchist movement.
It's called group extremity shift, much studied in social psychology. And that moral framing makes it possible to do violence against the enemy.
And so looking back at this summer's No Kings protest, there were dozens of arrests reported across several cities due to instances of violence, which appears to be why there's this increased focus on peace for this weekend to best get the protesters' points across, Del.
Mara, as you pointed out, this will be the second organized protest this year of this degree. Historically, what do we know about just how effective these demonstrations actually are?
So it seems we'll have to watch out and see what the ultimate turnout numbers look like. There's actually this ethos among political scientists found by reviewing past nonviolent demonstrations that no government has withstood a challenge of 3.5% of its population mobilized against it, that the demands become impossible to ignore. And so 3.5% sounds like a small percentage, but in America, that's about 12 million people. And so the No Kings organizers say they want to defend against authoritarian policies, and it was estimated that almost up to 5 million people, I believe, back in June attended. They're expecting more now. And so it remains to be seen how the protests are received and how the Trump administration will respond.
Scripps News business and tech correspondent Mara Barrett. Mara, as always, thank you very much.
Up next on Today As It Happened.
We know that many patients with or without insurance will find themselves paying fully out of pocket for their prescription medicines. And so lowering the drug costs is a huge opportunity to help increase access.
And later,
we spoke about also about long range, of course, and I want not to make statements about it.
we're glad you're back with us on Today As It Happened. I'm Stephanie Liebergen here with your daily rundown of today's top stories.
California will begin selling low-cost insulin on January the 1st, Governor Gavin Newsom saying. This comes from a partnership between the Golden State and nonprofit Civica. The state-branded insulin will sell for about $11 per pen. A 5-pack will set you back a maximum of $55. Civica says it plans to distribute the generic medication to pharmacies nationwide. Women are leaving the labor force at nearly the fastest rate in history. The Bureau of Labor Statistics showing that 455,000 women left the workforce between January and August of this year. Only the pandemic saw a larger exodus. Highly educated mothers and black women are leading the trend. The main factor seems to be the rising cost of childcare and early education. Economists are warning the continued losses could erase historic gains and hurt U.S. economic growth. President Trump and his top medical advisors are announcing a game changer for families using IVF to conceive. Next year, the cost of fertility drugs produced by EMD Serrano will be discounted through a government website. Right now, a single cycle, by the way, can cost close to $5,000 without any financial assistance. Joining us right now is Libby Horn. She is the Senior Vice President and Head of U.S. Fertility and HIV Endocrinology at EMD Serrano. Libby, exactly how much will prices drop under this new move with the White House and your company?
Hi, Del. Thank you for having me. We are very excited about this game-changing opportunity for patients. It's going to mean significant savings for patients who are paying fully out of pocket for their prescription medicines. We're expecting that patients who use all three of our therapies for a typical cycle of IVF would be paying just $3,000 compared to the $5,000 price tag that they're typically paying today.
There will be a direct-to-consumer portion of this plan. How will this work for families trying to go through IVF?
Yeah, so beginning January 2026, patients will be able to go to trumprx.gov, where they'll be able to find our products listed at new direct prices that represent a significant discount compared to the prices that they're paying in pharmacies today. This has been an amazing collaboration with the administration and also with fertility pharmacies that we partner with today. So beginning again in January 2026, patients will be able to go to trumprx.gov to access these prices.
So, Libby, the discounted drugs are just part of the IVF process, and a lot of families say insurance providers don't cover it. Is there a way to lower overall costs to help people?
This is a huge step in lowering overall costs. We know that many patients with or without insurance will find themselves paying fully out of pocket for their prescription medicines. And so lowering the drug costs is a huge opportunity to help increase access overall to all patients who are needing IVF therapy.
Okay, so let me play the skeptic. You know the old adage, the large print giveth and the fine print taketh away. Is there fine print that couples should be aware of?
Overall, we see this as a huge win for patients. This is beginning in January. Patients are going to be able to access our leading IVF therapies for a significant discount versus the prices that they're paying today. And that's only possible because of this new solution that we've collaborated on with the administration. And there's even more to come. We also announced yesterday that we're going to be filing a new IVF therapy, Pergoveris. And we are very excited about the opportunity to partner with the FDA on the new pathways that they've developed to help us bring this new medicine to patients in the US faster. So we're very excited. This is just the beginning. What patients will be able to see in January is just the beginning. And there's much more to come from us. So we're really looking forward to the opportunity that Pergoveris can also bring for patients. We hope very soon in 2026.
Libby, as you know, a lot of these new pathways that are being developed are coming about because of mRNA technology. It involves a lot of vaccines. It involves weight loss drugs. Is this affecting IVF as well?
So Pergoveris is a product that is approved in 74 countries across Europe. This really presents an opportunity for us to bring a medication and an innovation that is available in the rest of the world to American patients who need it too.
And that leads me to my next question. Where does the U.S. stand when it comes to affordability and IVF?
Yesterday's announcements were historic, and it's a huge step forward in ensuring that American patients have access to the same low prices in the rest of the world. We were very happy to partner with the administration on this new opportunity to make our products available and bring innovation that is consistent to other countries across the world.
Libby Horn is with EMD Serrano. I want to make sure I got that right. Serrano?
EMD Serrano. Thank you, Del. You know us now.
Libby, thanks. Thanks for being with us today, and good luck.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
I think that Russians afraid about tomahawks, really afraid because it's a strong weapon.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Stephanie Liebergen. Let's jump right back into our rundown of our top stories of the day.
We see Putin using delay tactic very well. And just before the call, it was Tomahawk missiles going to Ukraine. And then right away in the afternoon, we see the language of President Trump changed. So Putin is going to try to stretch time and delay as much as he can, because he wants to buy time.
Hopefully they won't need it. Hopefully we'll be able to get the war over with without thinking about tomahawks. I think we're fairly close to that.
I think that Russians afraid about tomahawks, really afraid, because it's a strong weapon, and they know what we have, what kind of weapon we have, our production, and they understand that combination with tomahawks, because we speak about it. We don't speak about tomahawks like tomahawks. We need combination, and that's why they're afraid of this combination. They understand what we can do.
President Zelenskyy, as you were watching, just briefing reporters after his meeting with the president at the White House. It followed that high-profile meeting with the president earlier, where there was a gaggle of press reporters. Unclear whether Zelenskyy will leave Washington with what he came for, looking for those Tomahawk missiles, which will allow Ukraine to strike targets deep inside Russia. Russia's President Vladimir Putin calling those non-starters, but President Trump has said they are on the table. Zelenskyy just moments ago saying he did not want to discuss what they talked about. But there is this caveat, by the way. The president saying that U.S. stockpiles must be maintained. The bottom line, according to Zelenskyy, we trust the United States. We're also hearing from the White House, President Trump calling on Kyiv and Moscow to stop where they are and end the war. Scripps News International correspondent Jason Bellini in that gaggle of press reporters outside the White House in Lafayette Park, listening to what Zelenskyy had to say. Jason, your takeaway.
Hi, Jill. Well, one thing that I think was significant is that Zelenskyy said that the door was not closed to using, it says the United States providing Tomahawk missiles. He said that Russia is very afraid of them. He says that coupled with the drones that Ukraine has at its disposal and is using so effectively, and also that includes its long-range drones that they're using to hit Russia's oil infrastructure. If they had the Tomahawks, well, that is something for the Russians to be afraid of. He also talks about negotiations going forward, and I was surprised. He sounded somewhat optimistic almost, and he said that he's open to meeting with Putin, whether that be in Hungary, whether that be somewhere else. He thinks that he could have that meeting, but would that happen? That was what was coming out of the Alaska summit a few months ago, but there was no meeting that materialized from that. So at the moment, what we're left with is no real clear answers on sort of the big questions heading into this summit, Del.
Jason, it also seemed that Volodymyr Zelenskyy opened the door, or at least left open the door, to the possibility of land swaps in order for there to be an achievable peace. Is that what I heard, or rather what you heard?
Del, you were listening carefully, and yes, indeed, he did say that this is a very sensitive area. He's open to the idea, as he has always been, of right now freezing the lines effectively, and apparently that's what they discussed. That is what Trump wants, for them to freeze the lines right where we are. But that's basically takes us back to where we were just a few months ago, after the Alaska summit, when Trump was saying he wants the lines to be frozen where they currently are, and then they could negotiate, and then Putin rejected that. Does Putin have a different view of things now? Does he have a different view of things when there's the leverage of the U.S. potentially providing Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, which Zelenskyy just said Putin fears? We don't know the answer to that, but we may know fairly soon, because you've got this high-level delegation, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who's going to be heading to a meeting with Putin's colleagues, with his counterparts from Russia, to begin discussing some of these thorny issues, get a sense of where Putin stands right now. Has Putin moved away from his maximalist stances that he has maintained? Because after Alaska, it appeared that he has not changed that at all. Has the situation changed now? That's the open question. But yes, the territory, or what would happen with territory? It seemed like Zelenskyy was signaling that he's open to negotiation on that. Del?
We trust United States. We trust President that he wants to finish this war, and it's difficult. We think that it was also difficult to manage the situation in the Middle East, and if President was successful in it, I hope that he will manage this situation.
Scripps News International correspondent Jason Bellini in Lafayette Park, which is right across from the White House. The Zelenskyy meeting taking place near Blair House, the scene of so many historical moments in our nation's capital. Jason, as always, we thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us this evening for Today As It Happened. I'm Stephanie Liebergen. Have a great Friday night.